everyone, welcome to the last section of chapter 4. In the next week or so, we're going to be moving into chapter 5, which is all about supply. But chapter 4 here, we're wrapping up demand, talking about elasticity. So we'll talk a little bit today first about what elasticity of demand is, and then how do we calculate it and what sort of factors affect it. So elasticity of demand is a measure of how consumers respond to price changes. Like if the price shifts a little bit, are we like, oh no, not gonna buy that? Or are we like, well, I kind of still have to buy it, right? So if demand for a good is inelastic, it is not very sensitive to price changes. So if the price changes, demand doesn't shift by that much. However, if demand is elastic, it's very sensitive to any change in price, and demand will be impacted by the slightest change in price. Unitary elastic means that elasticity is equal to 1. So it's an equal trade-off. If price goes up a little bit, demand's going to go down a little bit, and vice versa. And then total revenue, we're talking about the total amount of money that a company receives for selling their goods and services. So what sort of factors affect elasticity of demand? Economists have developed a way to calculate how strongly consumers will react to a change in price. So original price and how much you want a particular good are both factors that are going to determine your demand for a particular product. So what's the price normally? And then like how much do I want or need that good? And that's going to help us determine elasticity. So as I mentioned, elasticity of demand is the way that consumers respond to price changes. It measures how drastically buyers will cut back or increase their demand for a good when the price either increases or decreases. So your demand for a good that you will keep buying despite a price change is inelastic. Okay, if you buy much less of a good after a small price increase, your demand for that good is elastic. So an example for inelastic might be like gasoline. I remember a time when gas was almost $5 per gallon, but we still bought it because we still needed to drive to work, right? So our demand for that good was inelastic because even that significant price increase, right? Right now we're under $2 a gallon. We didn't stop buying gas just because the price went up. So demand is inelastic in that scenario. Usually your needs are going to be more inelastic. If demand is elastic, a small price increase may make me say, oh no, I'm not going to buy that. Okay. So, for example, sometimes I buy like breakfast sausage at Aldi, and like 50% of the time it's on sale for like 99 cents for like a little box of it. So, when it's 99 cents, I buy a few at a time, and then when I go in there in the other weeks and it's $1.50, I'm like, nah, I'll wait till a week when it's on sale again, right? So my demand for that is really elastic because it is dependent on price changes. I'll buy it, I'll buy more of it when it's on sale, and I just won't buy it when the price is up. Usually you have elastic demand more so with wants, right? Things that you don't necessarily need. So it can be influenced by a number of factors. One, the availability of substitute goods. Like, are there other things I could make for breakfast? Absolutely, right? So, are substitute goods readily available? A limited budget that doesn't allow for price changes. So if you're really tight in your budget, you may not have any room in your budget to pay a little bit more. And so your demand for certain goods may be very elastic. And then there's the perception of a good as a luxury item. So when the price of sushi goes up, I'm probably going to be a little bit less likely to buy it because it's kind of a luxury food, right, compared to some of your other options. So that can affect elasticity as well. So how do we calculate elasticity of demand? You are going to take percentage change in a quantity of a good divided by the percentage change in the price of that good. Okay, and the result of that is the elasticity of demand. The law of demand implies that the result of this equation will always be negative. This is because an increase in the price of the good will always decrease the quantity demanded, and the decrease in the price of a good will always increase the quantity demanded. So I have a couple examples here. You can kind of try them out for yourself, but I'll just walk you through example one. So example one is an example of elastic demand. The price in this scenario decreases from $4 to $3, which is a decrease of 25%. The quantity demanded increases from 10 to 20, so this is an increase of 100%. So if we take 100 divided by 25, right, elasticity of demand is equal to 4. Elasticity is greater than 1, so the demand is elastic. In this example, a small decrease in price can cause a large increase in the quantity demanded. And then example 2, you're looking at inelastic demand. So if you would take a moment to kind of read through that, what you need to know is that if elasticity of demand is less than 1, demand for that good is inelastic, which means that the increase in quantity demanded is small compared to the decrease in price. So there is the math for you. So as I mentioned, if the elasticity of demand for a good at a certain price is less than 1, demand is inelastic. If elasticity is greater than 1, demand is elastic. If elasticity is exactly equal to 1, then we call it unitary elastic. So this cartoon kind of demonstrates that idea of substitutes. Right, so he's using sheep instead of a mower because the price of gas is up. So some factors affecting elasticity. You have availability of substitutes. So if there's very few substitutes for a good, you are likely to still buy that good, and therefore elasticity is inelastic. An example of one of these goods may be like a life-saving medication like the EpiPen. If there's a wide selection of available substitutes, like there is, say, in the grocery store, you can just buy a different good, right? And so demand is elastic. You have relative importance, which means how much of your budget do you really spend on that good? If it's a really large portion of your budget, like a car, right? You're going to have a car payment. Then you might have to cut back. You might be like, I got to save more money before I buy a car, right? So then price changes are elastic, okay? Any change in price is going to affect quantity demanded by a significant amount. If it's just a small portion of your budget, like a $5 coffee and now it's $5.10, you're probably still going to buy that good. And so if you don't spend a ton of your budget on a single item, demand for that good's probably going to be inelastic. Necessities versus luxuries. So necessities tend to be inelastic, like gasoline or milk or housing, right? Luxuries tend to be elastic. So a Starbucks coffee or whatever it may be, a treat yourself item, if you will. And then change over time. So demand tends to become more elastic over time because people develop substitutes, right? Like if you have the patent on an EpiPen right now, demand for the EpiPen is inelastic. But over time, eventually that patent will run out and other pharmaceutical companies will start making generic alternatives for the EpiPen. And so over time, demand for the EpiPen becomes more elastic because more substitutes become available. The elasticity of demand determines how change in price will affect a firm's total revenue. So that's why it's important in the study of economics, because it helps businesses really measure how consumers will respond to a change in price for different products. So when a good has elastic demand, in this example maybe, raising the price of each unit sold by 20% is going to decrease your quantity sold by an even larger percentage. And quantity sold could drop low enough to actually reduce the firm's total revenue. And that same process works in reverse. So remember, total revenue is the amount of money that a company receives for selling its goods. Still have to remove expenses to get profit. That's what total revenue is. So if a good has elastic demand, the new quantity sold can actually reduce total revenue. So firms need to be mindful of this when they are making decisions about price changes. If the demand for your good is inelastic, it may be less concerning to your firm, because even an increase in price could increase your revenue because demand isn't going to drop off by that much. So in this example with the prices of pizza, you can see that total revenue increases up to $4 a slice. But if they would go up to $5 a slice, demand would decrease by so much that it would actually make their revenue less. So a firm is likely in this scenario to price their pizza at $4 per slice. So if demand is inelastic, consumers' demand is not very responsive to price changes. And if the price increases, the total quantity demanded will decrease, but by less than the percentage of the price increase. So this results in increased total revenues. So milk, for example, maybe it was 80 cents and now it's closer to $3. People are still going to buy it because there's not many true alternatives. So they're still going to buy it, and that's going to increase revenue for a firm because that is an inelastic good. So elasticity of demand determines the effective price change on total revenues. This slide asks, why will revenue fall if the firm raises the price of a good whose demand is elastic? That would be because demand decreases by an even greater amount than the price increase, right? And then the second question asks about the same question, but if the good is inelastic. And you can see that sort of drawn out in the chart for you on this slide. So why does a firm need to know whether or not demand for its product is elastic or inelastic? Because knowledge of how the elasticity of demand can affect total revenue leads the firm to make pricing decisions that will lead to the greatest total revenue for them. If a firm knows that demand for its product is elastic, it knows that an increase in price could reduce their total revenue. If they know that it's inelastic, an increase in price will increase total revenue, which is why, like the EpiPen, for example, as I've talked about, they can charge like $700 per pen for something that costs like $20 to make, right? Because they know that demand is inelastic. All right, so that is the end of chapter 4. As we move into chapter 5, we'll be discussing a lot of the same things, but on the supply side. So we'll be talking law of supply, elasticity of supply, factors that affect supply, so on and so forth. So try your best to compartmentalize this stuff from chapter 4 as demand. As we move into supply, everything sort of changes, but we'll talk about how these two factors interact. See you next time.